be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus came to a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who sat down at the Lord's feet and listened to him speaking. Now Martha, who was distracted with all the serving, said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister is leaving me to do the serving all by myself? Tell her to help me." But the Lord answered, "Martha, Martha," he said, "you worry and fret about so many things, and yet few are needed. Indeed, only one. It is Mary who has chosen the better part. It is not to be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
It's very appropriate for the optional memorial that is St. Faustina, which is why I chose the lovely vestments that Father Michael had left here in our oratory, in our chapel here, Radio Maria, of the Divine Mercy, and beautiful images of the Divine Mercy decorate our oratory here and also in your own building likewise. But St. Paul, isn't it interesting there? I was just listening how he says, he describes himself as having mercilessly persecuted the church. He was merciless as opposed to merciful. Very interesting. And so in his case, he could, with St. Faustina, align himself on the same path of likewise being an apostle of divine mercy. Because as he does, and as we see in several of his letters, Galatians, certainly one of them, Romans 2, how he describes his own journey and how he came from being this merciless persecutor to one of proclaiming from the heights, even to the laying down of his life, the divine mercy. So, and he struggled, like everyone else who wants to live a life of divine mercy. There's a struggle involved. He went to Arabia, spent some time there, and it took years before finally he began preaching properly and connecting them with Cephas and with James in Jerusalem for the Council of Jerusalem, and then his arduous journeys through Turkey and through Syria and ultimately to Rome. So an extraordinary journey of mercy in his own life, but also in his ministry to so many. So a very appropriate reading for today. Martha and Mary, then another very interesting and challenging reading too. Does it seem like Jesus is rebuking Martha? Perhaps a little. Is he suggesting that the only way is to simply recline at his feet and remain there and do nothing? I don't think he's saying that either. But he's certainly giving priority to what matters, and that's the things of the Lord. So I was reading this earlier, I was thinking there's an interesting parallel here. Just interesting just to put the two stories side by side. You have the two sisters, Martha and Mary, and of course Lazarus, their brother. Jesus loved the family very much. And later you have Jesus then telling the story of the prodigal son, where you have the two brothers and the father, the loving father. And kind of contrasting and comparing the two stories, how the two brothers reacted and the two sisters. It is said, Scripture doesn't tell us for sure, we don't know, but that Mary is said to be Mary Magdalene, and maybe the reason she found herself at the Lord's feet as she did was on account of, she loved him so much, she had this great conversion experience. And if it's the case, again, Scripture doesn't permit us to say it definitively, but the prodigal son could be compared a little bit like that. He returns to the Father, he's repentant, and he wins the Father's mercy, even though he had lost everything and wasted his patrimony and wished his father dead. He couldn't have offended his father any more than he did. And yet the older brother's outside tending the sheep and the herds and the land and doing all the things a good son should be doing in keeping the estate and the ranch or whatever up to date and up to speed and caring for everything and busy with all these things. And yet still he's thinks the Father is not appreciating him. And Martha seems to be caught in the same sort of cycle or the same loop as well. The difference being, though, that the prodigal elder brother refuses to go in. He doesn't follow through. There's little in the way of mercy in his heart, and he seems to misunderstand the great magnanimity and mercy of the Father, and sort of fails to appreciate divine mercy. Whereas Martha, as we know later on in Luke's Gospel, she's there after Lazarus has died, and she's the one who goes to meet the Lord, who was late in arriving for the sick call, because Lazarus is already 4 days in the tomb. But there she professes her faith in him. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ. Extraordinary profession of faith. So Martha has made that journey of mercy, like St. Paul has made that journey of mercy too, and as each of us are called in the same way to make that journey of divine mercy.